to on my end just because so I can get a copy. Okay, cool. Wait, I'm also gonna start recording on my camera because it's like off cam. Yeah, just give me a second. I'm making a documentary for my senior project. So I can explain a little more about that if there's time later. But for now, not today. Gunishish everyone. Wushkitan tus hit dakanakdach. Or Akwan dakanakdach. Thank you everyone for coming. And I'm Moriah Hayes. I'm an undergraduate student at UCSD, communication major, and ethnic studies and Native American Indigenous Studies minors. And my sister and I are from the Wishkitan people of Auk Bay, which is located in Juneau, Alaska. It's a weird like eagle wolf shark. I don't know. It's hard to like directly translate, but basically our house is shark, which is Wishkitan. And we wanted to share some children's stories today. Please if you want to chime in.
Sure. So, yeah, I guess to give a little bit more of my background, I am no longer in college. That's been a while, but and I'm an early childhood teacher, and of course, since March, we've been doing it all online. And so, yeah. So essentially, long story short, there's a lot of books that we have, like that my mom had sent me in terms of like actual physical books. That I'm going to share for tonight. And then also one of the books that I'm going to share is a book that I just sort of found on one of my, online teacher resources that one, I was surprised that, or happily surprised that there was something Indigenous represented, even in like early childhood kind of like book spaces. So one, that was a surprise for me. And two, it was linked to, it's the culture of the tribe is native to like Vancouver area in Canada, but that's like to the Indigenous. And I know, Nayeli, you were saying you're, if I understood correctly, Indigenous to like the Mexican region. It's the government that has put all of these like borders and things that weren't already there before. And so we're all like connected in these different ways. So anyway, so yeah, one, it was an Indigenous book, and two, it was like I could relate to it. It was a shared ancestry with it, which is pretty great. And yeah, so I guess I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Back to you, Moriah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think the first story that we wanted to read was the colors in Tlingit, right? So Talisa and I are still learning the language ourselves. I think a lot of us can say that probably, but I think this year has been kind of the most important for like my personal journey. Because I missed the potlatch that our family had when I was in Ghana. Uh, so this year's been really important for me. So we can learn the colors now.
Yeah, well, as you can see, and I'm sure we can all relate, yes, this whole thing is really raw. And as she mentioned, we're kind of learning, and part of the history there. And again, I pardon me if this is repeated for you. I don't know how much she's shared. I know I'm kind of new to the space, and I think I've seen you a couple of times with like the game nights and stuff. But yeah, so I mean, essentially with our family's history, so it's our mother's side, and if you keep going up, mother, every mother before us, and so I think there's another power there. Or at least for me, there's another power there, that every single mother before us, every womb before us, for tens of thousands of generations, has been Indigenous to the like Southeast Alaskan area. And so there's a power in women that I think is we're still learning about. And so that's, I think, another connection for us. But the immediate history is that our great grandmother sorry, that was my work email. Let me close that. In the 40s, when World War II happened, so our great grandmother her father is Japanese, her mother is Tlingit, and essentially, long story short, again, I don't know how much Moriah has shared, but long story short, the family was taken apart, and her Japanese father was sent to internment camps. Her mother was kind of just left to herself with her entire family gone, and the kids, which was very common, actually, in fact, like legally standard for all of the kids, all the Indigenous kids, to be shipped off to boarding school. At boarding school, there's the horror story of kids being shaven, kids being just their culture basically stomped out of them entirely, in really traumatic ways. And so, and that's the narrative that is true for most, if not all, of the Indigenous groups in Alaska, and I'm sure for many of the groups in the lower 48 as well. As Alaskans call it, we call it lower 48. But anyway, and so in recent years, it's all been about kind of revitalizing the culture. So the potlatch Moriah mentioned, which I'll talk more about in a little bit, it was the first one in that area in I don't even know how long, many decades. And so, yeah, so basically on that note, when she says we're still learning, that's all part of it. Is only a handful of people are fluent Tlingit speakers, and when I say handful, I mean like you could probably count them with maybe two hands, maybe one, in terms of actual fluent speakers. And so that's another part of the revitalization efforts, is to bring the language back to life. Okay, so there's this color book, and like I said, I am a preschool teacher, early childhood teacher, and so I can magically make the book come onto the computer. So here we go. Yes, my kids get a kick out of that too. Okay. Anyway, so
I'm gonna steal that for my classroom, okay?
Yes, do it. No, literally, I just took pictures of, and then here it goes onto here, and then PowerPoint has a setting where it looks like it's turning pages, so it's like, woo. Anyway, so yeah, there you go, little tips. Fun stuff. Anyway, so yeah, these just kind of go through colors, and it's kind of a fun little way to start. And again, we're kind of trying it out. So yeah, so this is the way that colors are described in Tlingit is like there isn't necessarily one word for it. It's like it's a description of what it looks like, which is really interesting. Just to think of how different kinds of cultures describe different things, and like there are so many more ways to describe things in Tlingit. So yeah, so this is Tuch Yak Yati. You can try it if you want.
Tuch Yak Yati.
Yeah. Tuch Yak Yati. And so when there's the X with the line under it, it's like a kind of, as I understand it, again, my limited understanding. Yeah, like a kitten. Tuch Yak Yati. So yeah, looks like charcoal. That's black. Okay. And then so Lawuch Yak Yati.
Lawuch Yak Yati.
So that's gray, and there's a gray whale. And so this it's the term for this kind of art. It's form line art, which is like basically what you'll see in the Indigenous cultures in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, okay, so then we'll go to the next one. And so when there's a D and an L, the L isn't like a L sound. It's like you have to put your tongue in the back of your throat and kind of go. And so you might have heard us say Tlingit. So it's like you're kind of blowing out from your tongue. So Tleit Yach Yati.
Tleit Yach Yati.
Yeah. Tleit Yach Yati. Looks like snow or white. And then, so again with the L, shoosh, and this is Moriah's favorite word. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Shoosh. Shoosh.
Yeah, the reason why this is my favorite word is because I was in Ketchikan, and like I paired up with my cousin, and we were just like, it was kind of like a language and culture lesson in Ketchikan. And we had pairs and like we were just like doing like flashcards of the words. And my cousin and I were just like stuck on a cruise, like just like stuck, just like one of those words that just like stuck. And it means fireweed. And also like fireweed jelly is really, really yummy and sweet and amazing. So
Yeah, one day we'll have to share it with you all.
some actually.
Okay, so now that you all know that she has some, now you have to like, go raid her fridge or something. Yeah, okay. So then here's a couple more. So again, the X with the line under is like the cat. Shan yach yati.
Shan yach yati.
Looks like fire, which is kind of cool. Again, all these descriptions are really, really interesting. And this kind of berry looks a lot like a raspberry, but it's a little bit bigger and there's like different colors. And so sometimes it's like the deep red and sometimes it's bright orange, sometimes it's yellow. And in English, we call it salmonberry, and it's delicious. So yeah, if you're ever in Southeast Alaska, and a lot of people do like, well, pre-COVID and then eventually I assume after COVID too, when people go on a cruise to Alaska and stuff, they often go to like Ketchikan, where I was born, Ketchikan, and like most of the income there is tourism. And what they don't tell the tourists is they don't tell them about the salmon berries. So if you ever like go on a tour, like, all right, I know I can eat these, haha. So yeah, okay.
I also have salmonberry jam, so
there you go. Right, and I think there's two more. Yeah, this one and another one. Sheikh. So the W, that's a little hard. That I'm tripping over that. So it's like you kind of stop the sound. Sheikh yach yati.
Sheikh yach yati. And alder, it says it looks like alder, and the alder tree is what we use to smoke salmon and like smoke anything, but like the alder is what gives it the taste.
Yep, and that's the reason I'm posh with smoked salmon. When I see like smoked salmon from a grocery store or in a restaurant or something, I'm like, this is blah, like it's not even cooked. What is this? It's not smoked in a cedar house or with alder for days. What is this? Anyway. Okay, there's two more. All right, and so Moriah mentioned we're eagle, wolf, and shark. And so chalk, that's us. Chalk, shlowu, yach, yati.
Chalk, low,
nope, the L is the yeah. Chalk, shlowu, yach, yati.
Chalk, shlowu, yach, yati.
Looks like an eagle's beak. And of course this is a sun, but in formline art, so eagle and raven are dominant, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the potlatch. But the way you can kind of tell the difference in the formline art is the eagle's beak is curved, whereas raven's is straight. So just fun little thing. All right, and then so yach yati, pretty simple.
So yach yati.
Jade. There's a little green frog. All right, and I think forget how many colors there were. Actually, okay, there are more than I thought. There's more. Okay. All right, this one's probably a bit tricky. So this one, because there's no line under the X, I think it's more of a harder sound. So it's sheshk yach yati.
Sheshk yach yati.
Yeah, and remember the W kind of makes it like you make the mouth sound and you just stop the sound.
Sheshk
yach yati.
Sheshk yach yati.
Yeah, looks like a Stellar's J or blue. And then this one's fun. Kanat a kahini yach yati.
Kanat a yahini yach yati. I also have blueberry jam.
Basically, she needs to feed everybody. Actually, that's part of the Tlingit culture is, and I'm sure for many indigenous cultures, is that you if you're, you know, collecting food, whether you're hunting or fishing or gathering, you have to share it. Okay. All right, now I think this is the last one. So sagwat yachyati.
Sagwat yachyati.
Like hemlock bark.
Hemlock is the tree that we use to like get herring eggs, I guess. I don't know how to call that process, but yeah, it's how we like, I guess, fish for herring eggs. I don't know.
Yeah, basically you get a hemlock branch, yeah, and stick it in the water, and then the herring come and lay their eggs, and then you pull it out. Yeah, and so our mom, she actually a lot of our cousins kind of say this too, that, and I'm kind of thought this way too, that, you know, because we grew up with having herring eggs from the hemlock branch, you know, you don't eat that part, so you pull off the herring eggs. But then, you know, we have the kids and us who say like, how did the fish lay their eggs in the tree? So that's always fun.
Yeah, actually that took me a while to figure out that wasn't what it was. Like when I actually went to Alaska and I realized that the trees were never in the water. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, flying fish in Alaska or something. Yeah. Okay, so this next book is, and we have 3, by the way, that we're going to share. This next one is, for me, it's the only story that I grew up with. Like I remember hearing it as a child, and so when my mom got like these children books and stuff for me, like a couple months ago, then I was like, hey, it's, you know, it's the one story that I grew up with. And so it's kind of, and I think there are versions of this story in many indigenous groups, at least in Alaska. Yeah, it's called Raven and the Box of Daylight. So yeah, I mentioned eagle and raven. So in Tlingit culture, it's all about balance. And so you inherit, or you kind of follow the maternal line. So if your mother is eagle, you are eagle, and your father would have to be raven. And so on the one hand, it's like logistically to make sure people don't intermarry, and so, but also to kind of like understand how I guess lineage works in a sense, and what clan you belong to and so on. And so our opposites would be raven. And like I said, it's all about balance. And so when I talk about the potlatch, I'll give an example of what that looks like. But yeah, so raven is often behind a lot of the like kind of origin stories or creation stories. And so it's almost like really prophetic. And so yeah, there's the raven in the box of daylight, and I'm gonna make it go on screen again. Here it goes. Okay, so there's the sun again. It's form line art, and this one's a pretty simple little story. It was the beginning of time. There was no daytime. The world was dark. Raven flew around looking for a spark. Raven would sit and ponder. Raven heard about Nas Shak Ankawu and his daughter who lived far yonder. Raven transformed into a tiny spruce needle and floated down the river. He found a way he could deliver. The daughter swallowed the needle. Raven was born a human child, and there are those salmon berries. Raven was spoiled, he was very wild. Nas, Shak, and Kawu was now Raven's grandfather. Raven wanted 3 boxes that Nas, Shak, and Kawu treasured. Nas, Shak, and Kawu gave Raven the 3 boxes. Raven opened one box, and out came the moon. Oh my, the night was no longer gloom. Raven opened the second box, and out came the stars. The night was filled with some light. Oh my, what a sight. Raven flew out the smoke hole with a 3rd box. Who did Raven outfox? Raven flew out to sea. Raven flew with glee. So he turned back into a raven and he stole the third box. He opened the third box and out came daylight. There was sunlight. The world was bright. Raven brought us light. The end. Yeah.
So the cool thing about Raven too is I think our mom just told us recently that the raven who brought us the sunlight was actually a white raven. And they recently found an actual white raven in the wild, I think in Canada. Like just like this past year, which was really cool because it was like an actual like white raven. Not just like albino, it's like it's different. And I think like the what she was saying was like the white raven is uh the most spiritually significant because it was like part of the creation story. And Talisa, you said that like this story also involved like how it turned black, right?
Yeah. So right, this is a pretty simple like poem story for children, but and there's more like meat to it. But yeah, the part where the raven takes the third box, like he transforms, he kind of, the raven is known for being a trickster, and so he kind of like basically tricks his way into, obviously tricked his way into being a human child, and then also then turning back into a raven, and like had started a fire and stuff like that, and so that the chief had to open the smoke hole, and so then he turned himself into a raven, stole the third box, and then flew out. And so on his way out, the ashes turned him black, and so that's part of the story there too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess I can pause here. Any questions before we move on to our third and final story?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So those books, they're beautiful, by the way. The illustrations and stuff like that are they done by local artists, or can you buy them now like in the stores, or?
Yeah. So Moriah, are we gonna share it now or later?
I can share it now.
We talked about? Yeah, so they're published, they're all done. These ones, I think, all of them, yeah. So there's a Sealaska Heritage Institute, and they publish, yeah, Mariah's, okay, Orca book, that's the publisher of the one I'm gonna read, and then the Sealaska Heritage, yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. So that's the like organization and that supports the local artists, yeah. And by the way, so these are just two. I have like an entire stack of these kinds of things. Yeah. And so it's a lot of the revitalization efforts, especially has been like exposing children to the language. Yeah. And really focusing on that. And so there are a lot of children's books, and like songs and things like that. And so yeah, Sealaska Heritage Institute is who published these. And yeah, they take all the local artists and stuff and support that way. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, okay, and the Orca book, we'll share with that in a second. Yeah. Yeah, and then on that note too, the pre-COVID tourism thing supports economically, of course, a lot, but mainly the natives, which is the beautiful thing about it, because it's like the natives themselves who come and sell the things that they've handmade and so on. Yeah, so that's a huge part of it too. Alrighty. Okay, so this last book, I'm gonna have to hold it together because when I found it, I was surprised to find it, and when I was reading the story itself, I was like, but essentially it's kind of about the narrative of the historical oppression, but also the triumph over it kind of thing, and just like the survival, not just of a human, but of a culture, which I'm sure many, if not all of us, can relate to. So this one is called The Secret of the Dance. And I don't know if you guys are teachers, this is on Epic. So this is the Epic book resource. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, as I was flipping through, this is the cover, and it kind of caught my eye because the like red, black, and turquoise and white are like the colors of Tlingit culture. And so yeah, so in a lot of like the form line art and stuff, you'll see like red and black, and then occasionally some turquoise as well. And you'll see in this book we have a lot of like our regalia it's called button blankets, and so and that's kind of what this is analogous to or alludes to, is like a red or black blanket with the white buttons, and so yeah, that caught my eye and I was like, what? Okay, so yeah, Secret of the Dance. And this is the author and the person of the story. Watlkina. Many years ago, when the world and I were younger, my family defied the government. Dancing's against the law, announced the Indian agent. We need to hold a potlatch ceremony, whispered the elders. We were sent out to play. The salmon are running, explained the elders. We should follow. We helped pack the boat with food and clothing, everything needed for a fishing trip. Sleep, said Mother. Dawn will come early. Gna, the baby, slept. My sisters, Tlahuek and Huata, slept. I was too excited. That night, I heard noises outside. I peeked as strangely shaped, blanket-wrapped parcels were hidden in the boat. Watlkina, help your grandmother into the boat, called Father. Careful, Gagas, I said as I steadied her arm. The boat rocked, and Gagas sat down hard. Oops! I bit my lip. She chuckled and patted my cheek. The young ones cuddled up beside her. We waved to the Indian agent. Put, 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 put. The fish boat sailed through the dawn light. Beyond the islands, the wind was fresh and the waves danced. Mother gave us dried berries and smoked eulachon, a special treat. We sailed all day through sun, wind, and showers. When we became restless, Gagas told stories. Tales about our bear clan, of the Hamatsa and the Zinukwa, the wild woman who kidnapped children. Dolphins leapt, eagles soared, and passing orcas spouted. See the Mach Inuk? We have their blessing, said Gagas. Father scanned the ocean. No government boats were following. Your eyes are young and sharp, Watlkina. Watch for the inlet, said Father. We must not miss the entrance. I knelt in the prow and stared at the coastline. I see it, I yelled. Father smiled and turned the wheel. Gitlach kasla, shouted the watchers posted at the entrance. Welcome. Gitlach kaskla, we all called. Our voices echoed along the cliffs. The inlet narrowed. The mountains were the highest I'd seen. Our fishboat seemed very small. It was almost evening when we came to the village, huddling between the forest and the shore. We anchored into the river. Our relatives fetched us in a canoe. I was glad to run and stretch my legs on shore. Time for bed, said Mother. We're not tired, we protested. Mother took me to one side. We need your help, Watlkina. Father and I must join the elders. The children should not come in case the Indian agent followed us. There may be trouble. I nodded. Mother drew the curtains and tucked us into bed. My throat ached with disappointment. We watched through the gaps between the curtains. Shadowy figures carried blanket parcels from the boats to the gukchi, the big house. We listened, but heard only a low murmur of voices, the wind in the cedars and the waves on the shore. Gana and Tlahueth fell asleep. Huata cried, "I want to go to the feast." She tried to get out of bed. "Be good," I said, "or the Zunukwa will get you." I repeated grandmother's story. The drumming and singing began before I finished, but Huata's eyes were drooping, so I dared not stop. Finally, they all slept. I crept to the window and lifted the curtain. The village was dark. Even the dogs were silent. But the drums made the air vibrate. The singing grew louder. It was more than I could stand. I crept out into the night. Aye, aye, oh! Chanted voices. Ta 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 ta, called the drums. My feet tapped in response. I followed the sound, dancing alone down the village street. Suddenly, I heard rustlings and movement. Strange masked figures surrounded me. Gagasa's stories had come to life. Eagle, whale, raven, bear, wolf, even Zunukwa, the wild woman, towered over me. I turned to run. The wild woman grasped my shoulders. My knees trembled. "It is good you see us," murmured Zunukwa. "For this may be the last time we dance. Watch for the hamatsa." The drums called again, and the doors were flung open. The figures left me to enter the big house. I darted between the closing doors and hid in the shadows. Fire was the only light. It glinted on the button blankets and masks as the dancers circled, weaving in and out of the smoke. I saw Bear, my clan symbol. He passed right by me. I could not mistake his sharp claws and fierce white teeth. In the firelight, he was a real bear, called onto the floor to dance his story. The hamatsa appeared from behind the screen. He danced in and out of the shadows. There was something familiar about him, something in the way he moved and proudly held his head. I stared, but the flames flickered. I could not see his face. The hamatsa danced beyond the fire. A log cracked and flared. For a brief moment, the shadows were banished. I knew him. That was the only time I ever saw my father dance. Before the dancers finished, I sneaked back to bed. My parents and I never spoke of that night. The masks were rewrapped in blankets and hidden from the authorities for many years. Now I am older than my father was when he danced. Each time I step in procession and wear the regalia forbidden him, I rejoice. Tears cloud my eyes as I watch the dancers. For now, the government invites us to dance, to honor visiting kings and queens and other guests. Life makes strange circles. Que más? That is everything. So I can read this little afternote too. So it says, this story is fiction, but is based on an incident in the life of the child Watlkina, now known as retired Judge Alfred Scow, elder of the, this is a little bit tricky for me to say, but this is the native group in, I think they're around Vancouver. Quikwat-Sut Yinuk, one of the Kwa nations. Alfred was born in Allert Bay in 1927. In 1885, the Canadian government passed a law forbidding Aboriginal people to hold ceremonials, including the potlatch. But these ceremonies were the very essence of Aboriginal culture, and so were continued in secrecy. After World War I, the government made determined efforts to stop the ceremonies by raiding potlatches. Once caught, the participants were given a choice between prison and having their masks and other ceremonial regalia confiscated. In 1922, Alfred's grandfather, Chief John Scow, and 2 brothers served time in prison rather than give up the family's masks and regalia. In 1935, Alfred's family sailed from Guilford Island to the village of Kingcome at the head of Kingcome Inlet. There, a branch of the Scow family hosted a forbidden potlatch as a memorial for Alfred's grandfather. Alfred and his sisters were told they couldn't attend. If the potlatch had been raided, any children found there would have been removed from their parents' care. Alfred sneaked inside to see his father dance. Luckily, the officials did not discover them that night. Many of Allert Bay's masks were confiscated in 1921 and only returned to the people of the Kwa-Kwa-Kauk nations in 1979. They are now on public display in Allert Bay's Umista Cultural Center. They watch from the walls as the traditional dances are taught to today's children. Canada's potlatch law was finally repealed in 1951. So, and I know this is Canada, but again, very similar stories in, same region more or less. But yeah, so yeah, I needed to take a minute after I read that story the first time I saw it.
Yeah, and part of the traditional Tlingit territory is divided by the U.S. and Canada border.
Yeah, and actually on that note, so Moriah mentioned we're eagle and wolf, and so that kind of, the way I described it to my kids is that we all have last names. And Indigenous culture, at least in Tlingit culture and many of the Indigenous Alaska Native cultures, instead of last names, you have like animals that represent your family, like your clan, right? The Bear Clan and so on. So it's, I guess that's how I described it to kids, is it's kind of like a last name where this is the family you belong to. So we're of the Shark House, Eagle and Wolf of the Shark House, Eagle and Wolf because of our mother. And so eagle and wolf are kind of not interchangeable, but like wolf goes with eagle kind of thing. And so the like geography of Southeast Alaska is that it's a bunch of islands, and it's mostly coastal life, and like oceanic life and so on. But as Moriah said, obviously the traditional land, the Canadian and US border doesn't do anything. Like it's not relevant in that context. And so she mentioned we're like from Auk Bay, which is Juneau area. And so the wolf part is like the landlocked part. And so our historical ancestry would go into Canada as well, in terms of like the regional history. Yeah, because there aren't wolves on islands, but there are wolves in like landlocked areas. But yeah, just fun little tidbits. Okay, the last little thing that we'll share before the night is just kind of a little bit about our family's potlatch. And so the potlatch is held, and again, this may be familiar to you in your culture as well, but potlatches are held kind of as a, like, I mean, there's a lot of reasons behind it, but this one was held in particular as a way to like let go of the grieving and celebrate life. And so because this was the first our family had ever done in recent history, and then also the first in the Ketchikan area, at least in, I don't know how many decades, but many decades. So we had a potlatch for 3 of our family members. Our baby cousin, who I guess he would be 18 years old or so now, but he died of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, when I was a kid, and so we're remembering him as well. And then my aunt, who had passed away like a couple of years prior to the potlatch, as well as our great grandmother, who passed away maybe 2009 or 10. Anyway, so yeah, this was, and again, I'll just kind of share or show a little bit here. So these are the pictures that David took. This is kind of what Ketchikan looks like, because basically it's a rock and you look one way, it's the ocean, like you look the other way, it's the mountain. But yeah, and there's usually big cruise trips and all kinds of stuff, and yeah, got lots of native art like featured and stuff. And yeah, so this was the first night. And so because we kind of lumped everything all together because it happened so infrequently, where we also had naming ceremonies and adoption ceremonies, right, to officially kind of bring people into the family. So this evening was for the Raven side. And there are a lot of women in our family, and so there aren't very many ravens because it's just a lot of women having women children, and so everyone's just eagle. So yeah, so our like I have one uncle, and then everyone else is aunts, and so of my cousins, like only one family is raven, and so they get a lot of support when all the eagles come and support them. Anyway, so yeah, so this is my Uncle Matt's son, Aiden, who's getting his like native name and so on, and I forget what the name is, but I remember the translation is Caribou Skin Canoe Man, so which I think is the same name that they also gave to this is like my uncle's ex-wife, and it was their baby who had passed away. And so basically he inherited his brother's name, his late brother's name. Yeah, and so then that's my aunt and her I'm this is also what Ketchikan looks like, so it's very, very wet and lots of like green just everywhere. Yeah, so that was the night before.
About names too.
Yeah,
we had like a naming ceremony. When was that, like fourth grade? Was I in fourth grade?
Sure,
like,
I don't know. It was
because Jaden wasn't born yet.
No. It was maybe 06 maybe?
Yeah. So somewhere around 06, we had a naming ceremony. That's where Talisa and I got our names. My name is Keith. If I said it right. And I believe mine means new mother. And it's like our uncle who's like in these pictures, his was Ich, which like everyone it was just like really funny because it's like a really, really powerful name. It's really important. I think it's the name of a shaman too, so it's really
like along the lines of medicine man. Yeah, shaman, medicine man kind of thing.
Yeah. And but it was just funny because like my mom says, like everyone was just like waiting and like anticipating this moment, and then all of a sudden like he gets if and also it's funny too because he's like our goofy uncle that just like always makes jokes and like rubs our cheeks like that and stuff. He's Uncle Bebop. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, and the one in red, that's our grandma, mom's mom. So so she's eagle obviously, but she was like there as the elder, and so she was the one who was kind of giving or granting the names, while there were also like ravens. So like he was raven, he's raven, kind of there representing on that side. All right, and then the next day was the potlatch ceremony, as well as eagle naming ceremony. So I think you're not supposed to have eagle and raven on the same night because it's like you're supposed to support the other, and so that's why we had it on 2 different nights to have like the naming ceremony for our raven cousins and then now for the eagles. And so yeah, this is all kind of the prep work of and a lot of it is like gifting, and so we were kind of preparing gifts for the others. And so like the eagles would prepare gifts for the ravens as a kind of like thank you for helping us, grieve and go through this process kind of stuff. So not just party favors, but like genuine gifts of appreciation. So yeah, there's my uncle, the goofy uncle, and there's me, and yeah, a bunch of cousins and my cousin's kids and so on, and my cousin's kids taking the camera and having fun with the camera. And so for the potlatch itself, yeah, a bunch of elders, and so she's kind of wearing not the button blanket, but so like it's kind of like representative of that. And this was in like a high school gym or something. So couldn't really have a tribal house or couldn't celebrate in the tribal house setting just because of logistics. But our naming ceremony when we were kids was in the beaver house, the tribal house there. But anyway, so there's my grandma talking and all kinds of stuff. So there were like Tlingit and Haida. Haida is another indigenous group that's really, really like close to the area, shared territory. And so there were Tlingit and Haida dance groups that came to also support for the Potlatch. And what they're holding up here, these are the button blankets that I was talking about, the regalia. And one thing to note, as I mentioned, with like the eagle and raven, is you don't put on your own regalia. You have to, like the eagles have to put it on for the ravens, and the ravens put it on for the eagles. And so it's like, and that's part of the ceremonial process is like, I guess, yeah, supporting and like, helping and putting it on for them. So that's why you have the ravens putting it on my cousin.
Yeah.
Wolf.
Sorry. More on that too. You're also not supposed to, like, technically not supposed to be making any regalia for yourself. Like, it's supposed to be for the opposite tribes, like, so like if you're an eagle, you're supposed to be making stuff for ravens, and like vice versa.
Yeah. Yep. Of course, there are a lot of rules that we're learning about too, because that you kind of just be flexible with. Yeah, you kind of just be flexible with, because obviously it's more important to revitalize the culture and to like be connected with it, and understand the rules, and like a lot of people say, like, understand the rules, but also know how to like maybe adapt to one, modern society, and two, just in the context of the history of it, of like it being stopped out, right? We want it to come back to life. And so if we stick to rules too much, then it's probably a lot harder to come back to life. Anyway, but yeah, in this context, we were, in terms of donning the regalia, we were very like formal and traditional about it. And there's my mama. I guess I'll make this bigger. Yeah, so here's some more family. That's my Aunt Chioko, my grandma Andrea, there's me, there's my mom, making a face at somebody. And there's my Uncle Matt and my Aunt Naomi. And then that's my cousin Larissa, so that's her oldest daughter. And then my Aunt Zeta. So also generations in this family are very, like, my mom was 17 when I was born, and that's like standard. And so, yes, so there are lots of like many generations. Like my cousin's kids are, becoming teenagers and stuff. And at the same time, my aunt just had her, her second kid, baby. And my cousin, one of my cousins is older than my aunt. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, very young family relatively. And so there we are, kind of standing. And so they had their regalia donned. The rest of us are kind of waiting. And I don't know if you can see it here, but we also had like kind of ash or charcoal on our cheeks before the regalia was donned. And that was kind of significant of like, or kind of representing like the mourning period. And so then once the regalia was donned and like things were observed, and then you kind of wash it off, and then it's all about celebration. Anyway, so come back. What just happened?
You just exited out of the folder.
There we go. Wouldn't be Zoom without tech issues, right? Okay. So yeah. So that's the gist of it. And again, my cousin's kid just being little hams. Yeah, so then in come like the dance groups and so on. And so there we are kind of with our regalia. And people singing and dancing and all kinds of fun stuff. And that was me making a face, telling a fun joke or something. Yeah, and then we were giving. So here's a naming ceremony. So, I mean, yeah, lots of things here, and we're dancing. So the only thing I wanted to show here, making a face. This was adorable. This is just cute. Where there was a mom and a baby, and like she had a little carrier button blanket for the baby, and we were all like, oh, it's adorable. Yeah, so I don't need to belabor this necessarily. I will just go to this one. I did want to show you just because we had talked about like potlatches. And so here they're kind of, in a lot of cultures, if you turn your back to somebody, it's considered rude. But in a lot of Alaska Native cultures, when you stand with your back, it's like you're showing who you belong to. And so that's why everyone's like, you see their backs. But it's like showing your clan or your family. And so we're dancing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to show this one. And this was like all the men were supposed to get up and dance for that one. I don't think I have a video of the women dancing because I was in the video where it was dancing. But anyway, it's just kind of fun. You can kind of hear the music. When it decides to play. Yeah, and again, that's my uncle.
Talisa, did you say your name?
Oh yeah, my name Tlach A is mine, and it's, I don't remember what the meaning is, but I do know that it's after my great grandmother. Yeah, it's playing. Yeah, now it's on repeat. I don't know if you noticed, yeah, this person's blanket. So this is a raven, and this is pretty common to have the raven look like this, and it's got the sun in its mouth. So you'll see that a lot with the raven with the straight beak, and the eagle will be curved, and the little thing. That's fun. And that's kind of all I had. But yeah.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you, Talisa, for sharing with me. I think we can take a little bit of time if anyone has any more questions. If not, that's okay too.
No question. I just think it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing like your family, your culture, and like just that intimate display. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
And save some of those jams, because when COVID's over, we're coming to visit.
Actually, so we went to Sitka, where our mom lives, where I went for a bit over the summer, and then I went a bit again in the fall. And so because we were all working remotely anyway, I was like, I'm gonna be in Sitka, bye. Instead of Los Angeles, where I live now. But that was, I guess, kind of nice that we got to spend a little more time than we probably would have otherwise.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we're all speechless because it was so amazing. And I just echo what Juan and Elena said.